On this edition of In-Depth Alaska, we look into the once mysterious balloon that has been floating high in the sky over Anchorage this week. Now, the mystery has been solved. We start with where the balloon came from.
A mysterious floating sphere spotted high above Alaskans in South Central both last night again today. Chief Meteorologist Melissa Frey joining us. Melissa, sounds like the mystery has been solved, though.
Yeah, John, I heard from several people today wondering what the balloon-like object was, and it was obvious. It wasn't something that we usually see in the sky. Hard to know exactly what it was, given that it was floating at around 60,000 feet. This is a zoomed-in view, but it was launched from JBER by Aerostar, an aerospace and defense company, last night. The balloon is a part of a defense exercise going on all month called Arctic Edge. It is led by NORAD and U.S. Northcom. They tell us the exercise is designed to improve readiness, demonstrate their capabilities, and enhance joint and allied force coordination in the Arctic. Interesting to see that over Anchorage. And this is what it looked like on the ground last night. They're sharing these images with us on the north side of JBER. You can see as they are inflating the clear balloon there. And this is what it looks like a little closer to the ground. You can see the full structure of it. Quite interesting what they are testing. And to learn more about what Aerostar, who designed the balloon, does, we talked with Russ Vanderwerff, Vice President for Stratospheric Solutions for Aerostar. Here is that interview. Well, thank you so much for taking the time. So here in Alaska, we have seen one of your balloons floating over Anchorage. And of course, it drew a lot of attention, a lot of interest, people curious what it was. And then we heard from JBER, the local Army Air Force base, that they were doing some defense testing and that they did, that you guys did launch a balloon from their facility. And that's what it was. And so we just wanted to hear from you. First of all, what is Aerostar? What do you all do?
Yeah, sure. So Aerostar is a small to medium-sized aerospace and defense company that's based here in scenic Sioux Falls, South Dakota. We do a bunch of different things, but one of the things we do is high-altitude balloons. It's actually what we got started doing back in 1956, so we've been doing it for a while.
Awesome. So what type of balloon is this?
Yeah, so the balloon you're talking about is one of our Thunderhead high-altitude balloons. So the Thunderhead balloon is meant to fly for very long durations, months to, we actually set a world record at 336 days this year, carrying any kind of sensor communications payload up to, a couple 100 pounds of equipment. And it's solar powered, so it navigates using the winds and it flies all over the world and lingers for, like I said, months at a time.
Wow. So this balloon, we saw it launched the night before last, and then it took its path, kind of a circle around Anchorage. Is it steered or is it just at the mercy of the wind?
Yeah, no. So the way that the Thunderhead balloons work as far as navigation and steering goes is there are different wind currents. So these things operate in the stratosphere, say above 50,000 feet, probably 2 to 3 times higher than a typical aircraft. And we run software with a weather model on the back end, and it uses machine learning to look at different weather models to determine at what altitudes the winds will be going different directions. So you can kind of think of it like a sailboat, but in 3 dimensions. We raise and lower the balloon to catch winds that go in the direction we want to either get where we're going or to stay there.
Okay, and how does it move? How does it raise and lower when it's up there?
Yeah, so Thunderhead's what's called a superpressure balloon. So that means it's inflated with a lift gas to a pressure that's greater than the atmosphere around it. If it's like a basketball, right? If you push it, it'd push back on you. And so there is a sealed amount of lift gas in the chamber that is carrying the balloon up to altitude. And then there's a second chamber that's a ballast chamber. We call it a ballonnet. It's just French for little balloon because, aerospace people like to have fancy terms. And basically, we use a compressor, a blower, to push air, just ambient air from the atmosphere, into that ballast chamber. So as the balloon gets heavier, you blow more air into it, gets heavier, it sinks. And then because it's pressurized, all you gotta do is open that valve on that ballast chamber, and that pressure pushes the air back out, and then the balloon goes back up again. So it's just it uses density or buoyancy, right? Just move up and down to catch those winds.
Very cool. So simple physics, but also pretty impressive technology that you've harnessed that. Is that a new technology or is that something that's been being used for a while?
Yeah, no. So, I mean, obviously, like I mentioned, we've been building stratospheric high altitude balloons since the 50s. And really, the technology for building high altitude balloons out of plastic basically goes back to even the 20s and 30s and earlier. But the idea of using solar power and ballast to navigate and steer using the winds is really something that only got proven at scale over the last, say, 15 years or so. So, we started working with Google on Project Loon. They were using balloons to provide cellular coverage in sub-Saharan Africa and rural South America and other places where there was no other alternative. And by flying balloons with them for a long period of time and exploring what was possible in the atmosphere, we kind of got into understanding that there's a lot more variation in that wind speed and direction than was previously thought. And that's what enabled this mode of operation.
Now, what kind of payloads can you put on a balloon like that?
Yeah, so, really think of anything you could do with an aircraft or a satellite. Compared to an aircraft, the operating cost over long periods is much lower, right? And compared to a satellite, it's a lot easier to quickly get in the air. But, we like to think about really two different classes of payloads, we'd say communication and remote sensing, if you break it down really broadly. And so communication could be anything from relaying data for, the government or military over a long period to providing just cellular communication. We did a demonstration flight with NASA and the National Interagency Fire Center last year, where we were providing LTE cellular coverage to people's firefighters' cell phones in the field. And then the sensing in that case was an infrared camera, so they could monitor the spread of the fire in real time and have that information available on their phone. So, really broadly speaking, that's the direction. We do all kinds of different sensors, all kinds of different communication waveforms. And it's really what makes sense. We're so high up, we can see a really long distance. And so that wide area of coverage is what really drives those use cases, as it were.
Okay, very interesting. Now, have you had other balloons in Anchorage or in Alaska working before?
Yeah, we've done a bunch of both commercial work and government work in Alaska over the years. So these are the things where when we fly, commercially or as part of a government exercise, we're always squawking with a transponder like any other aircraft would be. So the FAA knows where we are. We file a flight plan. Anybody can go on like flight tracking websites and see us. But there's always still the surprise of, hey, look, there's that thing up there. And, people are surprised and wondering. And so we love talking about what we're doing and explaining it, but it's not new, and we've certainly done it before.
Could a customer, just generally speaking, could they say, we want a balloon to go up to this altitude for this long with this specific payload, and then you kind of take it from there and make it happen?
Yeah, I mean, we'll work with any range of customers. So some people will come to us with just an idea like, hey, could we do this? Could you stay in this area and sense this kind of thing over this period of time? We'll work and reach out to sensor vendors and do the engineering integration work and so forth to figure out how to get the job done. Other customers will come to us and say, hey, we want your bolt points and your wiring diagram. We're going to connect this thing to your balloon, and we'll make sure its safety of flight is taken care of, and then they take care of the payload. So it's a real range. I think we're seeing more and more customers nowadays that are looking for sort of that data product as a service, where it's like, I want to detect methane leaks, or I want to provide this communication capability in a disaster response. Because not everybody is a seasoned balloon operator, they're usually like, okay, you take care of getting the team out there, getting the balloon in the air, getting it where it needs to be and keeping it there, and get us the data back. And so that's the model we typically work into, but we do work with some customers where they do their own launches. NASA flies a lot of our balloons, larger balloons for research every year, and they have their own launch crew and everything. So we're open to anything. It's just kind of a range based on the customer's investment, technical proficiency, level of experience, and so forth.
Gotcha. And how is this different or similar than a weather balloon? A lot of people are familiar with weather balloons and those radiosondes that go up. How does this compare?
Yeah, so your most typical, what you'd think of as a weather balloon, would be a radiosonde, and that's a small balloon. We're talking 3 or 4 feet across that's carrying maybe a couple pounds of sensor gear. Radiosondes are designed to release, and they take a sample profile of the atmosphere as they rise, and then they just burst at a certain altitude, and that small payload comes back down. So they might fly for minutes or maybe a couple hours. In contrast, a Thunderhead balloon, as I mentioned, is carrying a couple 100 pounds of payload for 3 months, 6 months, 9 months at a time. So it's flying for a lot longer. A radiosonde has no navigational control, whereas the Thunderhead does have that navigational ability. A Thunderhead balloon's typically 60 to 100 feet across instead of the 3 or 4 feet across. So it's larger, it's a lot more sophisticated. And again, it has that positive navigation control and ability to coordinate with air traffic, whereas again, a radiosonde is kind of a weather balloon is a quick one and done kind of thing typically.
Gotcha. And the Thunderhead balloon, you can have it return to the ground at a designated place and time?
Yeah, so where we really coordinate hard with local air traffic control is really on the launch and then the descent, because that's when you're transiting through that manned airspace, whether aircraft would be flying. So in either case, we're doing up to the minute updates before we launch. We're making sure the regional air traffic folks are okay. There's nothing in the way. And the same goes on a landing. So we'll navigate the balloon to where we want to land it. Our flight prediction software will be giving a continuous readout to the pilots of where that landing point will be. We'll be working with the local air traffic control, and once they give us clearance, the whole system descends under a parachute. But we can again predict that landing point, and the timing we coordinate with local air traffic.
Okay, very interesting. Now, is there anything else that you think people would just want to know about Aerostar, or just about this technology in general, or what the capabilities are for the future?
Yeah, I mean, look, I like to work here because I like to think of this as we're kind of at the Wright brothers moment here. This idea of using navigationally controlled stratospheric platforms is just something that's starting to be done, operationally and not just in test and experiment mode. And so there's a lot of places this can go, and we're just starting to discover some of those. Like I mentioned, any kind of mission where you're sensing or communicating, it's a really great platform. It's responsive, quick to launch, can stay persistent. At Aerostar, we like to say, connect, protect, and save lives is our mission, right? And there's just a wide space in there. I think we're exploring all of it. And then it'll be interesting to see how the technology develops. I think we're going to see a lot of more stratospheric platforms. So there's companies working on balloons and solar-powered glider aircraft and things that operate up there. We're part of the HAPS Alliance, which is an industry group that's developing this kind of tech. And there's just a lot of momentum right now and a lot of interesting things I think we're going to do. So it's right at the forefront of it. It's pretty exciting and cool.
Awesome. And this particular balloon, is it already down on the ground, or is it going to be up? Should Alaskans expect to see it around for a while?
Yep. No, it's still airborne. And like I said, you can go out to public flight tracking sites. We're squawking a call sign like anybody else would be. So we'll be flying it around for a while and kind of whatever the mission and customer dictates, and doing what we're supposed to do for them. But, again, we like these things to last for months at a time. So, that's a good thing from our perspective. It reduces the cost dramatically to keep them operating. And, again, they're green, they're easy, they're efficient. Once they're up there, they're just collecting solar energy and floating in the wind. So it's a pretty neat technology.
Pretty cool. All right, Russ, thank you so much for your time. We appreciate it. And you have a lot of Alaskans looking up this week.
Sounds great.